Richard Dawkins, The God Delusion, The Worship of Gap, searching for a particular example of irreducible complexity is a fundamentally unscientific way to proceed. A special case of arguing from present ignorance, it appears to the same faulty logic as the God of the Gaps strategy condemned by the theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Christianists eagerly seek a gap in present-day knowledge or understanding. If an apparent gap is found, it's assumed that God by default must fill it. What worries thoughtful theologians such as Bonhoeffer is that gaps shrink as science advanced, and God is threatened with eventually having nothing to do and nowhere to hide. What worries scientists is something else. It is an essential part of the scientific enterprise to admit ignorance, even to exalt in ignorance as a challenge to future conquest. As my friend Matt Ridley has written, most scientists are bored by what they have already discovered. It's ignorance that drives them on. Mystic exalt in mysteries and wanted to stay mysterious. Scientists exalt in mysterious for a different reason. It gives them something to do. More generally, as I shall repeat in chapter 8, one of the truly bad effects of religion is that it teaches us that it's a virtue to be satisfied is not understanding. Admission of ignorance and temporary mystification are vital to good science. It is therefore unfortunate, to say the least, that the main strategy of creation propagandist is the negative one of thinking out gaps in scientific knowledge and claiming to fill them with intelligent design by default. The following is hypothetical but entirely typical. A creationist speaking, the elbow joint of the less spotted visual frog is irreducibly complex. No part of it would do any good at all until the whole was assembled. Bet you can't think of a way in which the visual frog's elbow could have evolved by slow, gradual degree. If the scientists fail to give an immediate and comprehensive answer, the creationists draw a default conclusion. Right then, the alternative theory, intelligent design, wins by default. Notice the biased logic. If theory A fails in some particular, theory B must be right. Needless to say, the argument is not applied the other way around. You are encouraged to leave the default theory without even looking to see whether it fails in the very same particular as the theory is alleged to replace. Intelligent design, ID, is granted the get out of jail free card, a charmed immunity to the rigorous demand made of evolution. But my present point is that the creationist flaw undermines the scientist's natural, indeed necessary, rejoicing in temporary uncertainty. For fully political reason, today's scientists might hesitate before saying, interesting point. I wonder how the wizard frog's ancestors did evolve their elbow joint. I'm not a specialist in wizard frog. I'll have to go to the university laboratory and take a look. Might make an interesting project for a graduate student. The moment the scientist said something like that, and long before the student began the project, the default conclusion would become a headline in a creationist pamphlet. Visual prop could only have been designed by God. There is then, unfortunately, hookup between scientists' methodological need to seek out areas of the ignorance in order to target research, and I'd need to seek out area of ignorance in order to claim victory by default. It's precisely the fact that ID has no evidence of its own, but thrives like a weed in gaps left by scientific knowledge that sits uneasily with science need to identify and proclaim the very same gaps as a prelude to researching them. In this respect, science finds itself in alliance with sophisticated theologians like Bonhoeffer, united against the common enemy of naive populist theology and the gap theology of intelligent design. The creationist love affair with gaps in the fossil record symbolize their whole gap theology. I once introduced the chapter 1, the so-called Cambrian explosion, with the sentence, "It is as though the fossils were planted there without any evolutionary history." Again, this was a rhetorical overture intended to whet the reader's appetite for the full explanation that was to follow. Said Hindstein, tell me now how predictable it was that my patient explanation would be excised and my overture itself gleefully quoted out of context. Creationists adore a gap in the fossil record just as they adore gaps generally. If many evolutionary transitions are elegantly documented by no more or less continuous series of gradually changing intermediate fossils, some are not, and these are the famous gaps. Michel Schemmer has wittily pointed out that if a new fossil discovers neatly bisect a gap, the creationist will declare that there are now twice as many gaps. But in any case, note yet again the unwarranted use of a default. If there are no fossils to document a postulated evolutionary transition, the default assumption is that there was no evolutionary transition. Therefore, God must have intervened. It's utterly illogical to demand complete documentation of every step of any narrative, whether in evolution or any other science. You might as well demand, before convicting anybody of murder, a complete cinematic record of the murders, every step leading up to the crime is no missing frames. Only a tiny fraction of corpses fossilized, and you are lucky to have as many intermediate fossils as we do. We could easily have had no fossil at all, and still the evidence for evolution from other sources, such as molecular genetics and geographical distribution, would be overwhelmingly strong. On the other hand, evolution makes the strong prediction that if a single fossil turned up in a long geological stratum, the theory would be blown out of the water. And challenged by a jealous Paparian to say how evolution could ever be falsified, J.B.S. Haldon famously growled, "Fossil lived in the Precambrian. No such anachronistic fossil have ever been authentically found." Despite this creationist legend of human skull in the coal measures and human footprint interspersed with dinosaurs. Gap by the default in the mind of the creationist are filled by God. The same apply to all apparent precipices on the massif of Mount Improbable. Where the graded slope is not immediately obvious or is otherwise overlooked. Areas where there is a lack of data or a lack of understanding are automatically assumed to belong by default to God. The speed resort to a dramatic proclamation on irreducible complexity represent a failure of imagination. Some biological organ, if not an eye, then a bacterial flagella motor or a biochemical pathway is decreed without further argument to be irreducibly complex. No attempt is made to demonstrate irreducible complexity. Notwithstanding the cautionary tale of eyes, wings, and many other things, each new candidate for the dubious accolade is assumed to be transparently, self-evidently, irreducibly complex, its status asserted by Piat. But think about it. Since irreducible complexity is being deployed as an argument for design, it should no more be asserted by a Piat than design itself. You might as well simply assert that the weasel frog, bombardier beetle, etc. demonstrate design without further argument or justification. That's no way to do science.